When my daughter told me to find somewhere else to die, you're useless now. I packed my bags like the obedient mother I'd always been. 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, discovering that my supposedly loving husband had played the longest game of chess in history. Victoria was about to learn that sometimes the pawn becomes the queen. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how I went from homeless widow to the woman holding all the cards. Because honey, this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. 2 months ago, I was Margaret Sullivan, devoted wife of 43 years and mother to one spectacularly ungrateful daughter. When Robert died of a heart attack at 71, I thought my world was ending. Victoria swooped in during my grief like a vulture in designer clothes, cooping about how difficult this must be for me. "Mom, you can't possibly manage this big house alone," she'd said, her voice dripping with fake concern. The stairs, the maintenance, all those memories. It's not healthy. I should have seen the calculation behind her concern. Victoria had always been Robert's favorite, his little princess who could do no wrong. When she married that investment banker, Kevin, and started producing grandchildren, Robert doted on them all. Meanwhile, I was just the woman who cooked and cleaned and kept everything running smoothly. After the funeral, Victoria became increasingly insistent about my situation. She would call every morning, her tone laced with sugary sympathy that always left a bitter aftertaste. "Mom, I've been thinking, you really shouldn't stay in that big old house by yourself. It's not safe. You could fall on the stairs. You'd be so much happier in a retirement condo, don't you think?" At first, I brushed it off, telling her I wasn't ready to leave the place Robert and I had built our lives in. But she kept pressing, each conversation more forceful than the last. I could almost hear Kevin's voice in her words, pushing her to hurry things along, to secure her inheritance. One evening, she showed up unannounced, her arms folded, eyes scanning the house like she was already cataloging what she wanted to sell. "Mom, this is ridiculous," she said, pacing the living room. "You're rattling around in this mausoleum by yourself. It's not good for you. You should sell, take the money, and downsize. Kevin and I can help you manage the funds. You'll be so relieved." Her words stung, not because I hadn't expected them, but because of how quickly she had moved from fake concern to open control. I watched her run her manicured fingers over the mantel, where family photos stood in neat rows. She picked one up, a picture of Robert holding her as a baby, and smiled wistfully. "Dad would have wanted you to be practical," she added, as though invoking his memory would seal my fate. I wanted to scream that I had been practical all my life. That I had held our family together while Robert worked, that I had stretched every dollar, cooked every meal, cleaned every corner, soothed every fever. But I swallowed it down, like I always had. For Victoria, I had always been the silent mother, the one who made sacrifices so she could shine. Still, I noticed little things that didn't add up. Mail arriving with Robert's name on it weeks after his death. Letters from the bank sealed tight. I asked Victoria about them once, and she waved me off. "Just financial loose ends, Mom. Don't worry about it. Kevin and I will handle everything." But the way her eyes flickered told me not to trust her. Then came the breaking point. I had just finished folding laundry when she called, her voice sharp, no longer hiding behind sweetness. "Mom, you're being stubborn. You can't live there anymore. You need to pack your things. Honestly, you're just useless now. Find somewhere else to go." The words sliced through me. Useless. After everything I had done, every sacrifice I had made, that was what I had become in her eyes. I packed my bags that night, tears falling silently as I folded each dress, each sweater. I felt like a ghost in my own home, drifting through the rooms I had filled with love for over 4 decades. 3 days later, I found myself sitting in a lawyer's office, clutching my handbag like a lifeline. The lawyer, a kind man with silver hair, looked at me with a strange mixture of pity and curiosity. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, sliding a thick folder across the desk, "your husband left very specific instructions. I think you're about to be surprised." My heart pounded as I opened the folder. Inside were documents Robert had prepared years ago, quietly and carefully. A trust fund in my name. Property deeds signed over to me. Investments I never even knew existed. My supposedly loving husband, who had doted so heavily on Victoria, had been playing the longest game of chess in history. He had left her nothing directly, ensuring everything funneled through me. I felt dizzy as the lawyer explained the details. Robert had known. He must have seen what I refused to see, that Victoria's love was conditional, transactional. He had left me in control, making me the queen on the chessboard when I thought I had only ever been a pawn. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of something powerful in my chest. Victoria was about to learn that her mother was not as powerless as she thought. I left the lawyer's office that day with the folder pressed tightly against my chest, as though the papers inside were more fragile than glass. Outside, the city hummed like nothing had changed, but for me, everything had. Robert had seen me, protected me in his own quiet way, and handed me the keys to a future I didn't know I still had. For 43 years, I had been the background character in his and Victoria's play, but now the spotlight burned on me. When I arrived back at the house, Victoria was already there, waiting like a vulture. She was pacing the front porch, her phone glued to her ear, her tone clipped. The moment she saw me, she hung up. Finally, she snapped. "Where have you been? Kevin and I have been trying to reach you. We need to talk about listing the house. I've already got a realtor lined up." I walked past her without answering, my hand steady on the doorknob. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch at her sharpness. I set my bag down inside, placed the folder on the kitchen table, and looked at her calmly. "Sit down, Victoria. There's something you need to see." She frowned, irritated by my tone, but curiosity got the better of her. She slid into the chair across from me, her eyes darting to the thick folder. I opened it slowly, letting the documents fan out like cards in a winning hand. Her eyes flicked over the words, trust, executor, sole beneficiary, and I watched the blood drain from her face. What is this?" she stammered, flipping through the pages with increasing desperation. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is your father's legacy. He left everything to me. Every cent, every property, every investment. Nothing is in your name, Victoria. Nothing is in Kevin's. If you want anything, it will go through me." Her jaw dropped, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. "That's impossible. Dad would never." "Dad did," I cut in, sharper than I meant to, but it felt good. He saw the truth. He knew who was always there. He knew who kept this family alive while you played the princess. He made sure the pawn became the queen. For a long moment, she sat in silence, her face pale, her hands trembling as she clutched the papers. Then, like a cornered animal, she snapped back. "This isn't fair. You don't know how to handle money. You'll waste it. Kevin and you have nothing," I said firmly. "You told me I was useless. You told me to find somewhere else to die. Well, Victoria, it seems I've found somewhere else to live. And it won't be under your thumb." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She was used to control, to getting her way with a flick of her manicured hand. But now the power had shifted. For once, she was the one scrambling. In the days that followed, she tried everything. She showed up at the house with flowers, with fake smiles, with syrupy apologies. She sent the grandchildren with carefully rehearsed lines about how much they missed Grandma. She even had Kevin call me, his tone dripping with forced charm. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I saw through every performance, every manipulation. Instead of bending, I started planning. I met with the lawyer again, set up new accounts in my name only, and began liquidating the assets I didn't want. The house, the one she had tried to snatch from me, I decided to sell, but on my terms. The profit would fund the life I wanted, not the life she demanded. One evening, as I packed boxes, I found an old photo album tucked away in the attic. Inside were pictures of Robert and me when we were young, laughing on a beach, holding hands in front of our first house, cradling baby Victoria in our arms. My chest tightened, but instead of sorrow, I felt clarity. I had given decades of my life to others. Now it was my turn. When Victoria came storming in the next day, demanding to know what I was doing, I handed her a single envelope. Inside was a letter Robert had written before his death, sealed until now. She tore it open and read, her face hardening with every line. Victoria, the letter began, if you're reading this, I'm gone. You've always been my little girl, but I've watched the way you treat your mother. You take and you give nothing back. I cannot reward that. Everything I've worked for goes to Margaret because she has always been the heart of this family. If you want her help, you must treat her with respect. This is my final wish. She crumpled the paper in her hand, her eyes blazing. He didn't mean this. He was confused. He was sick. He was clear, I interrupted, my voice low but firm. He knew exactly what he was doing. And so do I. I turned back to my boxes, ignoring her sputtering rage. For once, her words didn't reach me. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook, but I didn't flinch. Weeks later, I stood outside my new home, a small cottage by the sea, quiet and filled with light. It wasn't the grand house Robert and I had shared, but it was mine. Entirely mine. As I lit a candle on the windowsill that first night, I whispered to him, "You moved the pieces, Robert." But I made the final move. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I wasn't the obedient mother, the silent wife, the background caretaker. I was Margaret Sullivan, the woman who went from homeless widow to holding all the cards. And honey, nothing had ever felt so good.